that are after this type of art, and so I think it would be great for the city of Casper. I think that's the best spot. If it goes out to Evansville, that money ends up in Evansville, at their restaurants and whatever. So I like it right there, and I also like the fact that it'll bring more people to the museum as well. So I'm all for it personally.
I would like to ask Mr. Navarro a question.
Sure.
Is this enough space, and what do you think of this location?
Yeah, how many parking spots are there? It seems like there's maybe, what, 40, 50? Are those parking spots available to use?
There's 120 there, I think, or something like
Is there
that.
that many?
Yeah.
Zulima, you know.
Mayor, council members, I'm sorry, I don't know the exact number. We could certainly get that information for you. Obviously, that is the parking for the Fort Casper Museum, so several of those spots are used, on a daily basis for museum activity, but unless there's a major event going on at Fort Casper Museum or on Fort grounds, it's generally not filled capacity.
Thank you.
What is the distance of the width of that? The footprint of the sculpture is going to be at least 108 foot minimum, so it looks like there's plenty of space there. I don't know the footage there.
Do we know the footage by chance?
Mayor, council members, I don't actually remember the dimensions specifically. It is 1/4 of an acre total in size, just the highlighted area. I would point out, if I may, just a couple of things. It's kind of hard to see, but there is overhead power here. So that would be a consideration that we would have to, or a challenge that we would have to consider and, make some kind of concession for, and then kind of blocked by our meeting box here, but there is another art installation here. So just another consideration. The park is utilized by the fort for a lot of different reasons, and there are actually remains on the fort grounds that we're.
Well, they use that big area for Casper Collins Days, I believe, every year. Don't they,
Yeah, the total grounds are utilized when we have large events, absolutely.
The center that's not even in the picture is what they use for Casper Collins Days.
Oh, I see.
This one is heading more towards the wastewater plant.
I see.
Right. And the plant is actually here. The plant ground starts.
Right. And you say that green spot's 1/4 of an acre?
4/10 of an acre.
4/10, yeah. So it takes a little more than ½ acre. So you can move it
Amber,
into-
go ahead.
So, for me, if we're, a few things that I'm thinking about when I think about this is, one, if we, whether we lease the land or sell the land or whatever it is, any public art that we install, we need to plan on it basically being there forever, because the public will become attached to it and will not want to see it moved, changed, altered, anything done to it ever in perpetuity. So to me, then, it makes sense that we need to have a really robust process around making sure that if we are in fact dedicating land to public art, that we have engaged as many stakeholders as we possibly can to make sure that the art that goes there is what we want there, is going to connect to the community, is going to serve people, as far into perpetuity as we can imagine, at least. And so to me, a public art process is critical and should be driven by the public, not by us deciding if we think this is cool or not cool. It should be a public process, and the things that are brought to us should be ideas from the public. So I at this point, I don't think I would support this, because it has not been, there has not been a process. There was never a sort of public initiative to expand our public art offerings. So I think all those things need to be in place first before we start pursuing public art projects. I love public art, so I certainly think we should do that, but I think we're getting the cart ahead of the horse here. And I also think it's a difficult comparison between this and Carhenge, because I think part of the charm of Car Hinge is that it is in the middle of nowhere. Just like the Prada exhibition in Texas, people drive into the middle of the desert to see a random Prada store. People drive into the middle of Nebraska to see this thing coming up out of the plains, right? This will not have that same effect. Not to say it won't be cool. Could be very cool in that location. Could help draw museum traffic. I'm not saying that it won't do those things. I just think that we've got the cart ahead of the horse.
Chai?
Just in terms of locations, this is the one you're presenting. Were there others that you felt like were reasonable options, or was it like this is really kind of the best bet here?
Mr. Mayor, the parks, as I said, we rolled out. Around the event center, there is definitely potential.
Okay.
And I would believe that Ms. Lopez would agree that there's a property there. The property across the street from Gruner Brothers does have highway visibility. It is a parcel that does have some underground utilities running through there, so from a development standpoint, building something there is not gonna be possible. Could a public art piece be installed there? Yes, but trying to get people to park, and that could be tricky. It would definitely be a walking, you'd have to walk to it on that location. So that one might be a little bit more restrictive if we want guests to come and not just do a drive-by. So it would probably be the event center at this point.
Okay, so the event center like this.
Did you have any slides of the event center spaces you had? No?
Mr. Mayor, no, we did not identify a specific area.
I do kind of like the idea of, so much parking around the event center. I don't know how close in this property would be, but that's kind of a nice thing about the event center. It's all the parking there is.
Bruce?
I'd be opposed to having it near the event center simply because we have a soon-to-be $40 million project coming in there. And then we're gonna be, and my feeling is the land across the street's gonna develop probably sooner than later, once that's built, to accommodate those businesses, and so I don't think that's the place for it. Initially I did, but with the idea of the indoor sports facility up there now taking up so much space, number one, parking is going to be at a premium. We would be able to afford any extra spots to give up anyway, and also I just don't think it goes in that area now that that's coming in there. So just a thought.
Lisa?
I don't know is there room like in the Crossroads Park going towards the event center?
Sorry.
Mayor, council member, I can't think that Crossroads is a great location. The closer you get to the river, we have some tree galleries there that are really critical to the health of the river, so we wouldn't want to disturb those. Then you have, Rotary's Park, the new bouldering park, and without getting into parking, which is really critical when you have major softball and baseball going on at the same time. I don't know that we could really accommodate a public art installation at that location.
So, I think on this, which I think is a great idea, but Amber took the words out of my mouth. I think we've got to be real careful on putting together a public art without looking at a public process. I think we need to look at doing that. I wouldn't feel comfortable making that decision based upon that. And so, I think this is a really cool idea. I think we've got to look at this relatively pragmatic in this approach to be able to do that. And I know we had asked for information, which they did come back for information, which is great. But I think we can also say, hey, what are our next steps if we're going to look at a public process to go kind of look at this. And kind of maybe mirror what other communities have done. And that's maybe something that our next step is. May not be moving quite as fast as Mr. Navarro would like, I imagine, but I think that if we can move forward with trying to have a process in place of how we can do that, I think would be important. So anyway, Amber?
I think too, the trouble with creating a process is going to be, like, now are we soliciting projects, right? This one is funded and has a funding source. They don't all typically, somebody who's soliciting for a public art piece would be paying to have the art installed, so I'm not even sure do we want, like, if it wasn't funded, like, do we want to, I think the public process needs to be there regardless, but if there's no funding attached to it, then what are we asking people for?
What does that mean to you, or to you, having a public process? Do you want to put it out for vote? Are we sending out surveys? What does that mean to you?
Could be surveys, stakeholder meetings, talking to arts organizations about what the art ecosystem here looks like and what would complement it the best. Talking to Visit Casper, you know, what are tourists looking for when they come here? Like getting all the stakeholders around the table to see if this meets that need or if something else would meet that need, and what story are we trying to tell about our community with our public art? And that I don't think I shouldn't be the one to say like this is our story or one individual. I think it should come from as broad of a group of stakeholders as we can assemble to determine that.
And I think in general, that's how a lot of public art is done. I don't know a lot about it, but I think in general, having as many stakeholders as possible, especially if you're going to put in an art piece that's going to be here forever, ostensibly anyway.
Given the circumstances are kind of out of order this time around, is there a way for us to kind of meet in the middle where we kind of convene the stakeholders on the idea that is present and then have kind of that community engagement to understand whether or not it meets what the criteria might be, and then perhaps use that as motivation to build out some sort of, you know, if we wanted to do something, say it goes really well and we decide that we want this to be, you know, a core component of our public community engagement, then we can kind of design the process there. I agree that it's out of order, but I also think it's an opportunity and in a lot of different ways, and so I'm struggling with not wanting to pass on something, but also wanting to make sure that it's not just, you know, done in a vacuum.
Agreed. Steve.
If I recall right, the statue that's there in the bottom right-hand corner was basically a private citizen came and said, I would like this type of a sculpture, here is the money, and we put it in. I believe that is exactly what happened with the people down by the library that is dedicated to Don Chapin. I believe, and I know that is what is done with the piece of art that is at the corner of First and Center with the circle and the eagle. And you may have even done that one, I don't remember.
That's the first piece I ever put in Casper.
Yes.
That was
and
done in 1994.
And that was for, I believe Dda Works gave that money for that. Yes, okay. And so basically, our public art has not been through your process. And I don't mean, but basically through a public process. People have come in, have donated it, and we have found a place to put it. And in essence, that's what Mr. Navarro has done here. He has another piece of his work sitting next to Asbury Center with the Methodist Church. I mean, that's the way, and I don't remember who put the chickens in over by the bank, and I call it that, but the kid with the rope and the chickens.
I don't know.
But anyhow, but yeah,
But
that was
just like, you know, the DDA, we did several projects with the city, and that was the DDA. We did the 20% chances across the courthouse. We did now that the commissary mall's torn down, it's the Mayor and the Colt, the Joy of Life is there. Those were all done through the DDA. So
And
we raised the funding through that. So
and
they came with the funding.
as a follow-up to that, we are not always a democracy. We are a representative republic, and we were elected to represent our constituents. And there's a point that we can't always go out to the public and ask them for all of their input, because as we have found out, those of us that have been around for a while, Only the people that are really passionate, either yay or nay, are the only ones that really ever speak up. The vast majority of the people sit around and just go along.
Bruce?
Well, and on that same thread, keep in mind that we also have a duty to enhance our town. We have a duty to bring in tourism dollars. We have a duty to build our tax base. And these are all things, and Chris, if I remember right, they're, Nextera is paying how much for this project?
Well, that's the thing, I don't know exactly what they've donated. In fact, I had a conference call on the 26th of August with 6 of Nextera's employees, or higher uppers or whatever. And they said that they're going through the process now. So, you know, like you said, this isn't gonna be something that's gonna happen quick. You know, I know the mayor was saying not as quick as I want. I don't see this thing being built until, you know, summer of next year. This would be the soonest that would probably be constructed. And then they talked to me about where all these blades would be coming from. Some would be, you know, they have a bunch of blades in Minnesota, and they have a bunch of blades, some blades in Colorado. So they don't have any blades in Wyoming, because I said I'd rather get Wyoming blades. I'd be more, you know, but that's.
Is it safe to say it's a $500,000 project, or?
Oh, I'd say that. And also, I'd say that Nextera Energy also told me that when anybody mentions their name in the media, they'd like them to go through their media department and not just quote them as doing this or that. Because they said that, I don't know, I reported an article and said that they were going to take care of the maintenance, and they didn't like hearing that. And I said, well, I don't know where they got that information, because I never stated that to anybody. So, Nextera Energy, they're a huge company, you know, and they got all these steps that they got to do themselves. So right now, I'm supposed to be working with some engineering drawings on this first project. This is a brochure I handed out today, so I'll give you an update of what's happened. Since that first meeting, I didn't know that Oil City News had a reporter here, and he wrote a story about it. Well, that story got picked up by, you know, quite a few other outfits, and then next thing I know, I was contacted by Angela Emery from Platte River Trails. She says, I would really like to have one of those there, so I met with her, and this is the first project. And we're not even going through Nextera Energy for the funding, we're just gonna get the blades for them. And because we raised the money, and we're trying to raise about 60,000, but it'll take less than that to actually build it. So this is the first project. Now I'm waiting on some engineering drawings and seeing about building this. This is gonna be built about 200 yards from the wooden derrick heading west. Right where the road curves over there. And also, I got contacted, you know, by the city of Mills, and the city of Mills wants to build one. And one of the projects they liked was the wind lodge. And they've said they've got the land for it. I've had 2 meetings with them already. And then Mayor Cheyenne called me, had a meeting with him, and they said that the city of Cheyenne would be interested in one. And then they said they really liked the wind hinge, and I said, well, I've committed that to Casper. He said if they would pass on it, that he would like to step forward and get that. So that's, you know, that was just from that one little story being written. So I think that, you know, once this thing gets, it'll get a lot of national and international coverage when it's actually built. And I think, you know, I mean, it's hard when you work with a big community. I've done so many public art projects, and the thing about public art projects, they usually don't put it out to the public. The majority of the ones that I've been involved in, it's always been, we have this project, you know, like I did one for the state of Colorado, and it was opened up, and then I won the contest, and then the process went through that. Most of the public art projects, I don't know if I've been in any of them, involved in any of them that have actually opened the voting to the public.
Lisa?
So, I think that Casper would benefit greatly from something like this. And so I like this location just because us as a council has always kind of had some heartburn over the fact of how much we have to subsidize Fort Casper Museum. And, you know, this is just helping to draw back to that attraction, and it's giving people something more to look at. So why wouldn't you just capitalize on that? And then it may actually help our subsidy issues with the Fort Casper, and maybe just bring some more people too, and that, so that museum could be utilized more. I think that if we put it out to the public, it's not like we've had artists beating the door down saying, I've got some artwork. I mean, like, we've already kind of agreed to this, and this wasn't put out for public art, so I don't think that this needs to be public art, or out to a public opinion and seeing who
wants to bring their artwork in at whatever location. I think it's just up to us to decide, and I mean, I think that this would help for Casper more than hurt it. And then help our community as well.
So, we got a lot left on our pre-meeting, at least 30 minutes worth, so I'm gonna try to move this along. So I guess, just ask Liz, so the direction that they're requesting is for us to continue on the path, which would be putting the art on that, okaying the art to go on that lot, correct? Liz?
Mhm.
That's what it is. So, to move forward with that in support of it, I know, Amber and I both were looking at kind of a more public process. And I think the public process we're talking about is not opening it up for an election process, but stakeholders that are in the art community to help drive that. And that's the NIC, Art 321, et cetera, those types of people that are in that community. So, but what I'm hearing though is the move from council to move forward with Windhinge. And so I guess if I get a thumbs up if you're in favor of moving it forward. I know Jai's probably like in the middle right now. I know exactly where she's sitting. And so, because it doesn't sound like there's support for a process to have stakeholders come together, it's kind of what I'm feeling. I just don't want to belabor that situation or anything. Do we address anything? Do we need to address something, John?
Yeah. Mr. Navarro, we understand there's a trademark dispute about the name Windhinge, that someone else has already properly trademarked it and uses it.
That's correct. It's gonna, I've told the guy to change the name to Wind's Hinge. Two words.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that's sufficient or not, to be quite honest with you, but,
I don't know, it's not, the Wind Hinge in one word, and then, you call it winds and you make it hinge. But you spell hinge like the different, it's a minute thing. I talked to a guy, didn't really understand why he was upset. He said it was his trademark. He's a wind sculptor, and he sculpts these wind turbine blades. Not turbine blades, he just makes them out of steel or whatever. And he doesn't do it full time, it's a part-time job for him, and I told him I would change the name. Now, this is just something that's recently come up, so we move forward. It won't be called Wind Hinge. I was gonna call it Wind's Hinge, 2 words. You don't think that's enough? What do you want to call it then?
it's not up to me. But the fact is, I think probably we need to have at least some condition that we're not saying this word and using this guy's trademark inappropriately in our discussions. And I certainly don't know, I think that there are, you can't do something very close to a trademark as well, but I'll leave that up to you and your attorney to sort that out. So, if we're going to move forward, wonderful, but I would say not necessarily this particular
We'll have to be mindful of
some
it.
type of,
Okay.
wind sculpture process.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, John. I appreciate the clarification.
Thank you, John.
So
Turbine hinge.
bearing in mind that it will probably have to be adapted to some extent, bearing the copyright infringement. So council's direction would be to move forward with this. Is that kind of where I'm seeing? Yeah, Kyle.
I mean, I personally would concur with Councilwoman Sutherland's request that we find a happy middle ground, understanding that historically we've not had any sort of process, but going forward, I would agree that there should be some sort of process. We should include more stakeholders. I think I brought up when I went to the WAM convention, the way Laramie has a couple public art installations off their highway. They're rotating exhibits, and this group of stakeholders gets together and they agree on a new art installation every year, every 6 months. I forget what the timeline is, but there's a collective group of stakeholders that get together and choose which art installation goes in these spots. And so this is obviously a more permanent structure, but I would still like to, I want to make sure for Casper, I don't know if they've been a part of this conversation, but I want to make sure they are. And I think it makes sense to have some of the art organizations in town at least help us. I'm not an artist. I don't know if we have any people that would consider themselves artists on council, but I would certainly appreciate more perspective. Thanks.
Do we know if Fort Casper's on board? It's gonna be so close.
Mayor, council members, I can tell you that I communicated with my staff so that they weren't blindsided by this presentation this evening. We have not engaged the Fort Casper Museum Association, which is a key stakeholder to us about museum location. And we haven't talked in detail with the staff about, you know, what it could look like. Of course, very preliminary conversation, and so we weren't sure how far we should take that discussion. I would agree that we need to engage some folks.
So my suggestion is, I know we want to move forward, but I think we've got to engage some people. If Fort Casper hasn't had that conversation, at the very minimum, Fort Casper's got to be in this conversation. And that's going to be close to their property or to what they're doing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if council wants to move forward, that's up. I mean, this is going to be them. But for me, if Fort Casper comes back and says, "No, this isn't aligned with what we're doing," there's nothing we can do about. I mean, we can put it there, I suppose, but I don't know. Bruce,
I know we have to move on, and I'll make this brief, but you know, I don't go to my neighbor's house and ask him if it's okay if I build a house next door on a lot that I own. So I'm sorry, nothing we put there is going to go with the museum unless it's something to do with the Confederacy or something with Wyoming. So asking their permission to put something on our land is out of bounds as far as I'm concerned. Do we want them on board? Sure, but if they're not, it really doesn't matter.
I guess I meant having a conversation with them.
Right, and I think that's fair, but we could still move forward with this and have that conversation with them. And as far as asking other artists and stuff, if I own Art 321 or I owe the Nick, I'm going to tell you no. I don't want people going over there when our stuff's downtown. So I'm going to tell you no. I don't want you to build it over there. So I don't know if that's fair either. They're private businesses that really should have no say in a tourist attraction that's going to bring hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax money into our city. That's just where I'm at with it. My job on this council is to protect our constituents, make sure that we're providing them the services they need, and make sure that we have the money to run our city. And when we have something like this that somebody else is paying for, and it's going to draw people into our community and give us money, I don't understand the fight. I just don't get it. And like Lisa said, we didn't ask permission for this. We didn't ask permission for the Boulder part. We didn't ask for permission for any of that stuff. They come to us and said, we have the money, you give us that land or let us put that there, and we're all like, sure, go ahead. We do it with everybody. And now all of a sudden I don't understand. I'm thrown off a little bit here.
Thanks. I'm like literally straddling the line here because I completely see every side to this equation. I think the way I'm thinking about it in terms of engagement is that it actually may enhance the opportunity. So if we're able to bring in our Fort Casper constituents, if we're able to bring in our other arts community members and people who understand kind of the art story that is involved in our community, I think I would really like to see this happen. I think there's huge potential here. I think having you be part of our community, having you be behind it, all of the components of this I really like. And I don't know that we suffer if we take 30 to 60 days to have a couple of meetings to just make sure that we're informed by how others are perceiving it, that it may actually bring about opportunities that aren't even in our purview right now. So I'm not necessarily, I hope that we don't have this meeting and have people say this is a terrible idea. I hope that it's like, oh, this is great, this actually can all add up to something even more than its single thing. So that's the perspective that I'm taking with it. And I do think it kind of straddles the line between like public art and more than that. So that's why I'm comfortable kind of finding this middle ground, but that's kind of the perspective that I was taking on, if it helps.
Just one more thing, sorry, because I did have one more thought. This council approved or gave our blessing, I guess, for them to put a wind farm up north of town. And if you look south of town, then windmills are everywhere. And they cost a lot of money, they don't degrade, and we're burying them in our landfills. And this is a way to utilize some of them without having to destroy the earth any further, I guess. And I will tell you, if I could go back and re-vote that, I would have been a no vote on putting more wind turbines in our community, because I'm sick and tired. I drove to Laramie last weekend, and that's all you see. It's gross. Our landscape is terrible now, all the way to Laramie. And I just wish I'd have voted no on that. But with that said, this is definitely going to be part of our history now, because they are everywhere around us in this community.
And I feel that it is part of Wyoming. Wyoming is the energy state. That's part of energy. I think it represents our state, our city. Well, I'm all for the.
So I guess we need to probably just move forward, because I know we could probably talk about this. So, Kenny, did you have anything you wanted to add? I know I totally lost you there because you were on.
No, you're fine. I've never had anybody beat down my door to try to put some art up, so it's kind of exciting. I don't think it hurts to stop for a minute and check in with a couple stakeholders, but otherwise I'm comfortable moving forward.
Cool. So why don't we do this then? If we can meet to a happy compromise, there's support to move forward with it. But I also think we can also add that into having some conversation with some stakeholders to have the conversation. And we're not saying public vote, we're not saying stakeholder, but to have a conversation to say, hey, look, council's in favor of putting this here. Let's have a conversation of how this looks. Might be a happy medium of what places like Laramie and other places do for public art to have this conversation. If council's comfortable with that, if we can do a happy medium on that, does that work? Amber, you're
What
giving
am I voting on?
moving forward with it, moving forward, but with the idea that we will engage stakeholders to have conversation with them, with the idea.
But
that's
I
gonna
like
move
the
forward.
stakeholder engagement, but I still, that doesn't
So what is the vote?
satisfy me.
Moving forward,
Moving
but
forward
then
with it.
talking
Yeah.
to stakeholders.
And moving and talking to stakeholders.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes to move forward. All right, capital rollover.
Mr. Mayor, members of council,
You're welcome.
on August 16th, you all authorized amendment number 1 to the fiscal year 23 budget. There was a significant amount of rollover, and you asked staff to come back and explain a little bit about what would be the ability to make certain that these projects the money was spent in fiscal year 23. Mr. Beamer put together the memo. A lot of detail went into this work session, and in essence, these are all primarily capital projects that look at facility upgrades that we have requested, infrastructure improvements through the utilities, and a lot of street projects. And they are all detailed by line item, and I'd like to ask if there might be any questions that Mr. Beamer might be able to answer if you have any, but the detail is here on the projects. They are scheduled, this is the kicker, for completion in fiscal year 23. They are primarily under contract or construction will begin this year. So we are on track that way. And I thought that the detail was there, so.
Any questions for Andrew? Okay, great.
I actually have one, Mayor.
Oh, yeah, you bet. Go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you. I would be curious, Andrew, your perspective on these projects that we're rolling over. Is it a culmination of things including COVID and influx of federal funding to do these sorts of projects? Is this a unique one-off situation, or is this something that you think we'll continue to struggle with into the future? The reason I ask the question is because I'm going to come into the next budget session fighting for another couple $1 million for streets, and I'm wondering, will that be worth the effort, or are we, biting off more than we can chew in that situation? Thank you.
Mayor, I think it would be too easy to say it's all COVID related. I think we always roll money over from one fiscal year to the next fiscal year. Everything that you see on attachment B has already been approved by this council and is well underway. That 28 million or whatever the total was, I forget what it is off the top of my head. Attachment A, we got money tied up with WIDOT, but we got a lot of WIDOT projects out there that we're waiting on them to get bid out, and for those monies to get awarded and accumulated to a contractor. We've got a number of purchase equipments, rolling stock that is probably primarily COVID related and supply chain issues. I think there are very few projects on this list that are street related, for example. But a lot of large capital projects that are taking a long time to get out to bid and to get awarded. So that's what I think you see, Councilman.
Thank you. So if we increase streets funding 50% next year, you think we'll be able to find contractors to complete them all? And
Mayor, Councilman, if you can find
50%.
50% more money, we will do our darndest to spend it.
I will try my hardest to find it.
He'll get it figured out. Thanks, Andrew. Any other questions for Andrew? Okay, thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Andrew. Fire pension aid.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this topic is on agenda tonight, and Ms. Johnson will give us a synopsis of what you will be voting on, and hopefully moving forward for approval for the resolution. So, Jill?
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. As the interim city manager has already said, on the consent agenda tonight, you will see a promissory note for the fire aid pension obligation. This is not a new obligation. We've talked about this before. This was actually created through the legislature back during the last session. The city is actually in a really good spot with this obligation. Back in May, this council approved the establishment of a debt service sinking fund. That sinking fund will provide the payments for this obligation for the next 20 years. So the attorney's office, the city attorney's office, worked very hard with the state's attorneys to develop a promissory note that really fits in with the legislation. The original one we got was not quite so good. So they worked very hard on that, and this actually does follow what the legislation intended. As far as the promissory note, it's really just a formalization of what's already in statute. With that, I can take any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Jill? Okay, thanks, Jill.
Of course.
Speed discussion for Casper Street.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, we had the citizen approach the council this summer about concerns of crash indications at Casper Street and Laramie Street. You tasked staff with looking into this a little bit further. Specifically, the Casper Police Department, our Streets Department, went out and did the traffic safety analysis, looking not only at a speed survey, but also at crash history. That detail was provided with the packet. The recommendation at this point is to leave well enough alone and no additional traffic control measures be implemented at this intersection.
Any questions for Andrew, the chief, Liz, anybody on that? Okay.
Just,
Yeah.
did we reach out to the, or I guess we'll do that now. We'll reach out to the individual and let them know that, you know, we did our due diligence. Okay, thank you.
Jack.
I guess I just had one question. I mean, I guess, so I asked for this, so I feel like I should say something. Thank you, first of all, for doing the work to go and look at the speeds. It seemed to me like, and I don't look at this data all of the time, so hence having questions about it. But that curve, I was curious about like the side swipes, like were there incidents where when it was slick, like that curve was causing the cars to go in? I don't know. The solution that was coming to my mind was like a sign that just said, it's slick, slow down. Because this poor man was concerned about his neighbors, and so, I don't know, it was like if it's a small thing, I just wanted to ask.
Chief.
Mayor, Councilwoman, I appreciate the due diligence that we put into this. When we went personally and looked at it, the sight distance is appropriate. Even way back at the school, you can see, you have a visual line of sight, there's a stop sign ahead. So the police department's records only showed 4 accidents within that area. The data that you've been given has included a lot of Laramie Street. Most of those are just side swiping, somebody was driving by and, their mirror got knocked off. Of the 4 crashes at this intersection that the police department has worked on, 2 of those were criminal events. There was a DUI driver, and there's no way to engineer roads for that type of event. One of them was a person that was fleeing from police officers, and was, and again, we don't engineer for that eventuality. One was an icy road event, only one in 5 years, and then the other one was just a simple crash, and most likely driver inattention was the root cause of that. And so in the end, the data that you're looking at shows that this is so far below the norms, being a safe roadway. I mean, it's just immensely safe. in the 95th percentile. It was extremely safe. And if you took the 2 one-offs on there that I think some high school kid was like, yippee, I'll see how fast my car can go in this short distance in the middle of the night, I'm probably sure that that was the same car, just 1 hour coming to the party and leaving the party. If you take that data out, you're probably in the 97th percentile of compliance, and there would be few roadways in the city of Casper that could equal this record of safety as what we currently have right there. Andrew may have a different opinion, but it's almost impossible to get these numbers of compliance.
Is that a good answer, Jack?
No. I'm not satisfied.
I just want to point out, so on the hill of 13th and McKinley, they have huge yellow arrows trying to show stop lines,
Boulders.
the whole 9 yards, and people still run through that
Hit
house.
that house.
So I don't know what it's going to take, but people still plow through that house.
No, it's like my biggest fear to cause busy work, but I just did. And thank you everybody for all of your time.
Thanks, everyone. Patterson Fonta.
Yes. Mayor, members of council, I'm gonna ask our Parks and Rec Director, Zulema, to present this item.
All right, Mayor, members of council, so the first time you heard of this proposal and gave your thumbs up conceptual approval was actually in May of 2021, so before my tenure as your director. Since then, the American Legion Post 2 has been working to raise funds and to complete the design details of the memorial that they intend to put at Patterson's Zonta Park. The memorial, as you will see in the MOU that's actually coming to you in your regular meeting tonight, includes electrical, lighting, sign stands, benches, structures, a beam arch, a handrail, sidewalk around the memorial from the pathway to the parking lot, flag poles, a memorial rock and boulder with brass, plaques and lettering, and name panels. And really one key component of this memorial that I would like to make sure that you understand is per the MOU, the memorial will be inspected by the organization at least once per month, and all maintenance will be on the donors. So the city won't accept any of the maintenance responsibility of this donation. And that has been how it is with recent donations, because staff capacity is not such that we can take on additional maintenance burden. And so thankfully the donor has been gracious enough to agree to those terms.
Any questions for Zulema about this? Great, thanks, Zulema. Appreciate the update.
I do have one question. So once if we say yes tonight, then they will be able to go ahead and start work tomorrow, in essence.
Mayor, council member, yes.
Okay.
Once the MOU is executed, they will be able to proceed with the work.
Very good, because I've been getting calls about that, so that's why I was curious. Thank you.
They did receive a grant with sensitive timeline, and I believe that's why they're nervous about getting it.
Yes.
But
Liz, anything on the agenda review?
The agenda review for the work session next Tuesday, as you'll see, we'll be talking about credit card fees within the organization, a forecast for subsidy, the alarm ordinance updates, Amendment A, and it's not too late to meet.
That's the next two.
It's the next two.
Possibly, well, it looks like there's, I was just gonna say to shorten some of those nights, to try to move some stuff on some pre-meetings, but I don't think we'll be able to move any of those 30-minute ones, so I don't think we're gonna be able to do it. I was just trying to avoid trying to keep everybody here till 10 o'clock. So,
We're having pizza that night?
yeah, I think we'll order something for dinner.
Mr. Mayor, the city managers made those plans already.
Correction. Yep.
Not fried chicken.
No fried chicken.
Okay.
Alrighty, any questions about tonight for Liz or the team? Oh, go ahead, sorry.
One other item, council, that I wanted to bring up is Transit is put together their Columbus Day schedule, and I wanted to update you before we would send out a press release. Columbus Day is a Monday. The city is closed. Transit is planning to operate the fixed route with the same route that they do on Saturdays from 7:30 to 3:30. So you will see the 6 routes functioning throughout Casper, Mills, and Evansville, because there are people that are in fact working. But we are cutting back that amount of time so that our employees can also have some time off. But we will be running the assist route as usual on that Monday because of our dialysis patients and other ones that need to get to doctor's appointments. So assist will stay the course, and we'll see a shortened time frame on our fixed route. But I wanted to give you all that update in case you have any issues with that before we would issue that press release.
All right.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
Didn't the name Columbus Day go away? Isn't it Indigenous People Day or something like that?
I need to call a friend,
I thought,
think,
that
because
was,
I don't know the
I
answer to
thought that
that
it was
trivia question.
federally changed. Better double check to make
Yes.
sure.
Politically correct. Okay, Indigenous.
Something, it's changed.
Columbus Day in my calendar still.
Well, yeah, a lot of calendars.
It is on my calendar.
Actually, if you look at the history, he was a pretty awful human being.
I know, I'm like, I'm okay with it being indigenous.
Yeah, he was a pretty awful human being to the indigenous people.
Alrighty. Thank you, everyone. Let's find out.
To please silence your cell phones, and that council meetings are televised and can be viewed on cable channel 192. I now call the September 20th, 2022 regular council meeting to order. All members are present, and Councilmember Humphrey is joining the meeting virtually. Would you guys come up and do the Pledge of Allegiance? One of you guys? Lead us in the pledge. All you have to do is come right up here to the microphone. Thanks, Jonas. Thank you. Whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thought that was disgusting. Thanks, Jonas. Just real quick before we begin the meeting, these 3 fellas and their troop leaders showed up to our meeting last week, thought there was a public meeting, and they ended up staying, though, a little after the work session, and they had some good questions for us. So glad you guys are back. Thank you. And you guys have to do this, right, for your Boy Scouts government? Yep. Not have to. You're here because you want to. Chair to entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the September 6, 2022 regular council meeting as published in the Casper Star Tribune on September 18th, 2022.
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor, oh my gosh, I was going to say Vice Mayor Nell, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Please cast your vote.
I think it's just people on the right, Lisa.
I think so too.
Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair to entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the first executive session on September 6, 2022 regarding personnel.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Eganbretson, seconded by Councilmember Gamroth. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With all members voting aye, Councilmember Humphrey voting aye, the motion passes.
Chair to entertain a motion to approve by minute action the minutes of the second executive session on September 6, 2022 regarding personnel, litigation, and land acquisition.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, seconded by Councilmember Eganbretson. Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
I did the first. Yeah. I did do the first executive session, right? I did, okay. Chair to entertain a motion to approve by minute action the September 20, 2022 bills and claims as audited by City Manager Napier.
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Ingebretson, seconded by Councilmember Gamroth. Any abstentions? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all the others voting aye, the motion passes.
Now is the time that we invite anyone in the audience who wishes to speak with the council to come forward. But please be reminded, as we state on the first page, state your name and address. Direct all questions and comments to the mayor and only the mayor. No personal attacks on staff or council will be tolerated. Council will not respond to personnel matters. These will be referred to our city manager. Questions posed by speakers may or may not be responded to by council members. Presentations are limited to 5 minutes and the duplication of speakers will not be allowed, nor time extensions are permitted. Please note that public hearings and ordinances have each their own comment period, so please hold your comment until those items come up when we get to them. Good evening.
Hello, Mayor, council members. I just wanted to be here. I noticed our update on our fallen veterans memorial that we're building. I've got some pictures of kind of what the big steel arch that we're going to have that's going to be visible for quite a ways off. So I brought those in for everybody to kind of see what we're doing. Luckily, we've got that. The big metal arch was built, is built, and we had Austin Engineering, which used to be West Tech, that builds the mine trucks. They cut all the lettering out and provided the steel. Wyoming Recycling provided the steel for the top and bottom banding, and High Country was able to weld it all together for us, because right now we're kind of having a shortage of welders, so that was kind of a big hoop to jump through. But I just wanted to give the council an update on their generous donation of the park and what it'll look like when we're done with it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Sir, do you happen to know, once this, if and when this passes tonight, when you guys will actually start on this, or?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay. That's what I was actually hoping, and I know Mr. Cathy was as well, but I wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth.
First intention was to have it would be finished this Sunday, but because of the bureaucracy of waiting to jump through the hoops, we weren't. As soon as we get the final approval, we're able to kick over that first domino, and then things will start rolling.
That's going to be a fantastic addition to that part of town, for
so
sure.
We're hoping to have it no later than the end of October. And part of our grant that we got from AARP is that it has to be completed before the first of the year. So, so we're anxious. We want to get it built and be able to finish it up before snow flies.
Thank you.
Councilmember Cathy.
Will you be talking with Mr. Wizenreed between now and tomorrow night?
I was expecting him to actually be here, but I will, yes.
Okay, very good. I will not call him then, but tell him that we're good, so thank you.
Yeah, they're all waiting for me to say, yeah, they give us the thumbs up on it. So
Larry's been calling me quite often. So, thank you. Yes.
Anyone else?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for the update. We appreciate it. Any others who wish to come and address the council? Okay. Please read the consent agenda title.
Establish October 4th, 2022 as a public hearing date for consideration of new restaurant liquor license number 48 for Blues Gypsy LLC, doing business as the Bluebird at the Cheese Barrel, located at 544 South Center.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to, by minute action, establish the public hearing date just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Gamroth, seconded by Councilmember Cathy. Any abstentions or nay votes? Councilmember Pollock and Councilmember Pollock. Abstain. Same. Any others? Okay. Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember McIntosh and Councilmember Pollock abstaining and Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of plat, vacation, replat, and zone changes related to the North Platte River Park No. 2 subdivision.
Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carver Napier dated September 12, 2022. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune dated September 15, 2022.
Thank you. Acting City Manager Becker, do you have a report?
I do. A little bit of detail about this project from kind of a summary history. Last fall, the staff and the Planning Division, as well as the Planning Commission, had brought forward the platting of these lots because they had been, yellow highlights on your screen, had been unplatted, and the Planning Commission voted to get those platted, and we looked at a rezone because currently that property is zoned Park Historic, as is that entire outlined blue area on the map that you see. The idea behind this, or the impetus, was to make this property available for development. There was interest from our economic development team within the Natrona County area, and there was interest by various developers. So this was initiated, and we brought forward initially this approval to council in January of this year. You, as a council, canceled that public hearing and asked staff to wait until the Ford Wyoming Center had conducted a study to see what might happen around that area and what recommendations might come from that Ford Wyoming study for potential future development. So in July of this year, we came back as staff and brought forward and said, okay, we are still recommending an M2 zone for the triangular parcel. We are recommending an M1 zoning for the larger parcel to the north, and then we are requesting that the event center parcel remain as Park Historic. The property we are requesting this evening as part of this public hearing would be for a vacation of the historic park or Park Historic designation and a rezone as indicated by Amanda. We are not recommending again a zone change for the Ford Wyoming Center. A little bit of history on this, and the recommendation I want to draw your attention to the memo that was presented in the packet. We, within the Casper area, do not have large parcels as available for industrial development, nor large large industrial sites. And from an economic development standpoint, we're asked many, many times by developers, do you have land shovel ready? And the decision to look at parcels that are currently undeveloped that the city owns that we could potentially sell and get into private hands for economic development purposes made sense, and you all concurred with that. The M1 and M2 zoning allow flexibility. They are a light industrial zoning, the designations of which are included in your packet, but do allow a lot of flexibility on the types of land uses we could see in there. But our reasoning on looking at large lot industrial land in the Casper city limits, we have looked at these zoning designations as being intentional, but not to compete with available private sector commercially zoned areas, which we do have an abundance of commercially zoned properties within the city. But again, the idea is these are large lots that we are looking at creatively structuring land deals for economic development purposes. A companion item to the platting, the vacation, the rezoning is also a suggestion that came out of the work session that you all had indicated, is it possible to get a simple master plan for this area? And again, with the map that Amanda has pulled up, that would be primarily the area in the 2 yellow highlighted, not the event center. A master plan, if we did and you elected to do so, would allow us to look at land uses in this particular area. The whole area encompasses about 100 acres. Out of 1,000 acres, which is what the city owned in that blue highlighted area. But we would be looking at land uses, we'd be looking at the utility infrastructure that's in place and what would need to be put in place. And we'd look at some opportunities for connectivity, looking at ways to take our trail system up into this area in the future and looking for new streets that might be able to connect that large tract, which is about 74 acres, do some interconnectivity there that would get us also. And if we pull out that other, thank you, Amanda. Yes. As you can see in this particular aerial shot. The blue highlight is the ownership of the city property. It does go up to Amico Road. You see the placement here with the yellow, but the ability to have some new street structure within that area could be part of a simple master plan if that's what you elected to do. We did something like this similarly with the Old Yellowstone District. I know that the Platte River Commons did a master plan just to get an idea. So that was another part of this memo and direction from you as we move forward into the second and third readings. The blue highlights out there, because again, from a historic standpoint, the property that the city does own up there does encompass not only the event center, but also the shooting range, the air modelers facility, the racetrack, the equestrian area, and then a large amount of unused land, which is what we've identified again with primarily the yellow highlights that we're talking about this evening. So we are, again, in the first public hearing and looking for direction on the zoning recommendation to M1 and M2 and the vacation and the platting of this property.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers are allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issue related to the North Platte River Park Number 2 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Anybody in favor? Okay, at this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues related to the North Platte River Park Number 2 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Those who are in opposition. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Pacheco, members of the council. My name is Keith Tyler. I'm a retired attorney. During my practice, I concentrated in real estate matters. I was heavily involved in a great deal of the development that's taken place in Casper over the last 20 years, from a lot of the stuff on East 2nd to the stuff on the west side and Wyoming Boulevard to stuff in the OID. I've been involved in most of, if not all of it. So I have some experience. I'm also an owner of projects. I've personally developed projects. Been involved or personally developed half a dozen residential projects, 3 industrial parks, and a variety of commercial retail projects. So I have some experience, and I'd like to share at least a little bit of insight and some comments. I don't have a lot of input on the particular layout of your plat, and I've heard what Liz said tonight about one of the plans for the property would be for economic development. I think that economic development is necessary, but I think there's probably some expectations that need to be identified or at least put in perspective. We have done industrial parks that have taken 15 years to fill out. They don't happen overnight. In fact, we have 2 industrial parks that still have available lots. And the other developers in the community, likewise. As to whether there are available large-size industrial parcels in the community, there are. We have a 50-acre parcel. We have a 250-acre parcel. I know there's a 160-acre parcel directly across from the airport that's available. I know that up north there are numerous industrial parcels available. I know there's industrial parcels available at the railroad spur out by the airport. So there's a lot out there. And that brings me to one of the issues that has to be acknowledged whenever you undertake one of these projects is absorption. We have a relatively small community and we're not growing very fast. How fast can we absorb additional development? At this point, we have excess development in the community. Adding more to it isn't necessarily a good thing. You know, can the city do it? They can. You've got deep pockets. And that's the other issue that I would like to bring up is using public funds to develop this area may not be a use of funds that is both wise or desirable surely from the perspective of other developers, we wouldn't want to see it. But putting city funds into a project that could sit there idle for 10, 20, 30 years doesn't seem like a wise use of public funds. The third thing that I want to bring up in regard to my insights on this kind of a project is you're working at cross purposes with your own goals. Youth councils historically have set a number of goals for development in the community, including the OID, including areas in the west side of town, Wyoming Boulevard, including the Amico reuse areas. Those areas are still far from being fully developed. Is it wise to go and open up another area? Because I have heard from city staff that one of the thoughts for this property by the event center is that a developer would come in and develop it into restaurants and retail and other types of commercial uses that we're clearly going to be in competition with, and contrary to your other goals of seeing downtown Casper, the OID, West Casper, et cetera, developed. So it seems to me that there are a lot of good reasons why maybe this shouldn't be pushed forward at this time, or if it's pushed forward with some clear delineations on what's being done. And don't be in a hurry to invest a ton of money into making it shovel ready. I've been working in that arena, like I say, for the last 20 plus years. I've served on CADA. I've met with and tried to entice these out-of-town developers to locate their projects in Casper.
Time's up, Mr. Tyler.
Well, anyway, it's not an easy project, and I think there's a lot of good reasons not to proceed with it this time.
Got a couple of questions, I think, for your comments. Vice Mayor and then Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you. Just a comment. I want to be clear to the public based on a comment that you made. This is not city money and this is not taxpayer money that's going to develop this land. All we're doing is rezoning it and making it available for private development, which will then fund it and build whatever they're going to build there. So there will be no taxpayer money. There will be no city money used in developing and building this area. All we're doing is rezoning it and having the land available so that if someone wants to come in and purchase that land, then it'll be available.
Then it's not shovel ready. And I thought that that was one of the goals, and certainly some of the description that Ms. Becker put forth was that you would be building some infrastructure, roadways.
No, sir.
Potentially you're doing a master plan to show where this would go. Well, it just appeared to me that that's possibly what might be taking place.
I can assure you that's not the case based on the conversations we as a council have had. All we're doing is making the land available so that if a developer decides to come in, then they can do what they want with it and hopefully add to our tax base.
Glad to hear that.
Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Vice Mayor. That was essentially the clarification that I was seeking. Was I don't recall us as council ever having a conversation about developing the land, just rezoning it. And I guess the reason I would be in support of it is I don't see the value of having the land as park historic now. So I just, I thought a rezoning, I couldn't see any drawbacks. And so that's why I was in support of it, is that as it currently sits park historic, I don't think it's doing us any favors or provides any value. And so if a simple rezoning could entice developers, increase attention to the area or whatever, I was having a hard time coming up with negative impacts. I do appreciate the points you've made, and I think you've, clearly got more experience than me in this field. But I guess I would be curious what your thoughts are on the value, if any, it has with it being park historic as it sits. Thank you.
The park historic means that it's not in competition with the other projects around the community. Park historic means that it's basically held in inventory for some potential future use. Again, economic development is all a matter close to our hearts, and we'd like to see it happen because it benefits everyone. But it's not an easy game. These developers come to town that are trying to promote a large project, and they want a lot of freebies. So far, we haven't landed very many, if any of those. We have gotten some economic development that's happened in the community simply because someone has chosen Casper because they find it an attractive place to live. The amenities of the Casper area are what attracted them and why they came here. They didn't get a lot of economic development help, and there's several that I could point out. But, I just, again, if you're not putting money into it, I think that's a big plus. Making it available, I don't know that that's going to do much, but.
Councilmember Ingebretz.
Just a quick comment. So the reason why we're doing the zoning now is just because that way we can have the appropriate funding, the zoning, so that if something happens, it's just that other 6 to 8 weeks that they don't have to wait if they want to purchase the land. So that's why we're doing it now.
But if it's not shovel ready, that's really the big delay.
Councilmember Pollock.
Thank you, and thanks to my fellow council folks who have made, council folks, is that a?
That works for me.
Who have clarified a couple of the points, but I, as somebody who's worked in economic development for a number of years as well, I do think some valid points here that we should consider as we imagine uses, future uses for that land. I'm personally in favor of rezoning so that we can, we're not just purely theoretically imagining uses for that land, but I do agree on a number of points here that we should be mindful of as we are, if the time does come to have any further city involvement with those properties. So, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Tyler. Appreciate your comments. Any others who wish to speak in opposition? Okay. There being no others to speak for or against the issues related to the North Platte River Park No. 2 subdivision, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An ordinance approving a partial plat, vacation, replat, vacation of public parkland, and a zone change for the North Platte River Park No. 2 subdivision.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cathy, seconded by Councilmember Sutherland. Any discussions? Okay, any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember McIntosh abstaining and Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
I now declare the public hearing open for the consideration of the annexation and zoning of Dowler No. 2 subdivision and rezoning of the Paradise Acres addition. Mr. City Attorney, do you have any exhibits?
Thank you, Mayor. 2 exhibits. Exhibit number 1, correspondence from Liz Becker to J. Carter Napier, dated September 12, 2022. And exhibit number 2, affidavit of publication, is published in the Casper Star Tribune, dated August 29, 2022.
Acting City Manager Becker, do you have a report?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, this project was moved forward for the Planning and Zoning Commission in August. This particular project is the actual annexation of 2 acres, which are currently in the county, and that would be the small square to the north in the diagram that you're looking at, and that as well as the rezoning of the larger brown area, which is currently zoned PUD, but it is within the city of Casper. The project is with the Paradise Valley Church, and what they're interested in doing is having all of this zoned as a C2 zoning upon annexation into the city. That C2 zoning will allow for the church use, and there is desire to have a school associated with that also. And that's a permitted use. The PUD zoning has, the C2 will allow more restrictions so that we do not end up with a lot of industrial use in that area, and it will be compatible, which was the recommendation of staff, to that neighborhood. So again, from a church use, that would be the confirmed use in that entire 2-acre plus the 8-acre tract. So we're looking at the 10 acres there totally. And we'll go to the aerial if we would, please. Currently, there is a structure that would be demolished on the small square to the north, which is a residence. And I know that we're going to have people speaking in favor of this. It'll kind of help explain, but I think we'll leave this parcel up so that you all can understand what the plan is with the Paradise Valley Church. Again, this was approved without comment by the Planning Commission at the August 18th meeting.
Thank you. Council will now listen to public comment. Public hearing comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplication of speakers are allowed. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in favor of the issues related to the annexation of Delaware Number 2 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Those who wish to speak in favor.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, I'm Dan Elston, and I live at 85 Primrose Street in Paradise Valley, and I'm here to speak in favor of this annexation for Paradise Valley Christian Church. The purpose of the annexation is to build a new church building, which will be 90 by 155 square feet, 24 feet eve height, and have an occupant load of 450 people in the sanctuary. We currently have our church building at 188 Valley Drive, and we have 2 services there, and this would combine us to where we would have 1 service in this new building. And so the memo has pretty much explained all items in there. As Mrs. Becker explained, there is 1 residence on the property that would be removed. Our Christian school is already on the property, plus a Christian high school, and then a storage building, which those 2 will remain. And if there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Mr. Elston? I don't think so. Great. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Any others who wish to speak in favor? Okay. At this time, I would ask those individuals who wish to speak in opposition to the issues related to the annexation of Delaware Number 2 subdivision to please approach the lectern. Anyone in opposition? There being no others to speak for or against the issues related to the annexation of Delaware Number 2 subdivision, I now declare the public hearing closed. Please read the ordinance by title only.
An annexation of 2 acres described as Tract 8, Dowler Number 2 subdivision, 3025 Paradise Drive, establishing the zoning of said parcel as C2 general business, and rezoning 8.2 acres described as the Paradise Acres Addition, 3041 Paradise Drive, as C2 general business.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on first reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Pollock, seconded by Councilmember Egebretson. Any discussion? Any amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember McIntosh abstaining and Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Please read the ordinance on second reading by title only.
An ordinance correcting a scrivener's error in the legal description of ordinance number 34-19 pertaining to the mistaken inclusion via annexation of the west half of lots 26 and 27, South Garden Creek Acres Number 2 addition in the Casper municipal limits.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to approve on second reading the ordinance just read.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cathy, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Council will now listen to public comment. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes, and no duplications of speakers will be allowed. Any discussion? Amendments? Please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Council will now consider consent resolutions. Please read the consent resolutions by title only.
Authorizing an IRU agreement between the City of Casper and Works Communications Incorporated doing business as Mountain West Technologies Corporation for fiber optic cabling services. 9A2, authorizing a contract for professional services with Desert Mountain Corporation for the street ice slicer procurement. 9A3, authorizing amendment number 2 to the contract for professional services with State Line Number 7 Architects for design services for the City Hall renovations and addition. 9A4, authorizing a cooperative agreement with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for street enhancements related to the Poplar Street improvements, CY Avenue to Collins Drive. 9A5, authorizing the execution of an access permit with the Wyoming Department of Transportation for access widening and access approach at 935 West Yellowstone Highway. 9A6, issuing a revocable license agreement with 6H Group LLC, doing business as Nolan Feed for maintenance of a loading dock within city right-of-way. 9A7, authorizing an agreement with JTL Group Incorporated, doing business as Knife River for the 2022 Platte River Trails replacements. 9A8, authorizing a donation agreement between the American Legion George W. Roman Post 2 and the City of Casper located at Patterson-Zonta Park for Wyoming's Fallen Memorial. 9A9, amending the City of Casper Statement of Investment Policy. 9A10, authorizing a promissory note to the State of Wyoming to fund Fire Pension A. 9A11, authorizing the Community Development Block Grant COVID Funds Agreement between the City of Casper and the Wyoming Community Development Authority to assist in the funding of for the Wyoming Food for Thought grocery store at the site of the former North Casper School. 9A12, authorizing the Community Development Block Grant Agreement between the City of Casper and the Wyoming Community Development Authority to assist in the funding of renovations for the Willard and Vision Center with the Casper Housing Authority.
Thank you. The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the consent resolutions just read.
Second.
Moved by Councilmember Sutherland, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Acting City Manager Becker, would you like to comment on any item?
I'd like to comment on the two CDBG agreements that are in front of you this evening. This is the first, and you all had worked with these two entities last September, so we are excited to make progress. You will see brought to you here in a couple of weeks sub-agreements with those two entities. So tonight's agreement is between the city and WCDA, basically for the management of those two agreements. And then again, as I indicated, you'll see sub-agreements brought forward, all in accordance with HUD regulations.
Thank you. Any abstentions or nay votes? Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll abstain from A1.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
9A3, please.
Abstain or no?
Abstain.
Abstain.
9A3.
Okay. Any others? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember Gamroth and Vice Mayor Nell's abstentions noted, and Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. Council will now consider minute action items. Please read the consent minute action titles.
Item 10A1, authorizing the reappointment of Bill Thompson to the City of Casper Investment Advisory Committee. Item 10A2, authorizing the purchase of one John Deere 310SL backhoe loader and grapple bucket for use by the Parks Division of the Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities Department. Item 10A3, authorizing the purchase of one new wide area mower for use by the Parks Division of the Parks, Recreation, and Public Facilities Department. Item 10A4, appointment of Travis Van Hecky to the Casper Planning and Zoning Commission. Item 10A5, approving the sole source purchase of 3 commercial truck packs for use in the Community Risk Reduction Officer fire vehicles from Iconic Metal Gear. Item 10A6, approving the sole source purchase of equipment and installation of equipment by Communication Technologies Incorporated.
Thank you. Chair to entertain a motion to approve the consent minute action item just read.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Engelbretson, seconded by Councilmember Pollock. Any abstentions or nay votes? Councilmember McIntosh.
Abstain from number 4.
Any others? Okay, please cast your vote. Please record the vote.
With Councilmember McIntosh's abstention noted and Councilmember Humphrey voting aye and all others voting aye, the motion passes.
Thank you. At this time, we ask council members to bring forward any relevant concerns or items of interest. We'll start with you, Councilmember Humphrey.
I don't have anything, but thank you guys for letting me attend remotely, and carpal tunnel surgery is healing like a dream, so thank you.
Good. Glad you're feeling better.
Thanks.
Councilmember Gamroth.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 minor updates. Went to Funky Junk over the weekend. Extremely successful like always, so just wanted to thank the AC family for putting that on. It's an awesome way to start the fall. It's one of my favorite events of the year. Also, we had a Dda Board Meeting last Wednesday. Pretty routine stuff. Splash Pad is now closed, so you'll see them start prepping for the community ice skating rink here in the coming months.
They are doing the fundraiser that Councilwoman Pollock brought up last week. I believe it's till tomorrow. We're in the last days. So if you've not voted for that, that's an opportunity for David Street to raise $30,000 over the course of the next 3 years, nearly $100,000 for free community events for us. And it would all be from outside this community, whereas mostly that funding has been driven from inside the community. So again, it's a great opportunity if you don't have the financial resources to contribute or the time to contribute to DDA, but you still enjoy those events down there. Please, it takes a moment of your time just to give them a vote. Go to their Facebook page to find more information. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Egebretson.
So I was just saying that the David Street Station is holding the Fall Fest, and then go vote for David Street Station so we can get some more concerts in here.
Councilmember Pollock.
Thank you very much. Only thing I have tonight is I attended my first regional water board meeting today. I won't attempt an update for you because it was the first and it's going to take me a minute to get up to speed, but I was there, so I'm working on it. Thanks so much.
Councilmember McIntosh. Councilmember Sutherland.
Thanks. Just a couple of things. The Amoco Reuse Agreement Joint Powers Board met last week. I was unable to attend, but a couple notes from the meeting were there continues to be interest up in the Salt Creek Heights, which is great news for development there. There's fiber going in. They've been working on that for the past couple of months, going in along the Platte River Commons. And then we're hoping to begin work with the brownfield specialist to help with development on those properties as well. So hopefully all of that is good and means that there'll be more exciting news coming. For the water board meeting, I too was there. I will attempt to give a slight update. So over the past couple of months, there's been pretty good water sales. It's been hot, as we all know. And so just worth noting that those were up over the past 5-year average. And then we also talked about rolling over some money, as we have had to do for the city as well. Some big projects just weren't done in the calendar year, so efforts like working on some roof repairs and stuff are underway in the near future, I'll say. So that's all.
Thank you. Councilmember Kathy.
Well, I attended the same water board meeting, and I think it's been said, so we'll pass on that. The other thing is that Blue Peak continues to lay fiber, actually do the boring and installing fiber on the east side of town. If you do have issues or concerns, you can call the engineering department. They have a specialist set up there to help resolve any issues that you may have. So that I would use as your first method of trying to accomplish something and go from there. So,
thank you.
They didn't do much damage to my yard.
Hey.
So,
nice.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. This council obviously holds a lot of seats on the Joint Powers Water Board. So. Right. Couple things. I did go vote for David Street Station. I hope that you will too. It's so simple to do. You just go on their Facebook page and click yes, and they're going to get $90,000 to bring concerts, like Kyle said, to the community. It's a no-brainer. It's free. It takes a second of your time if you could do it. I'm extremely excited and so ready for the Veterans Fallen Memorial. For those of you that don't know, it's going to be right there at that intersection by, just back a little bit by the Fort Casper, where all the geese are. So I don't know where they're going to go. Hopefully not on top of the memorial, but I'm very excited. It's such a great memorial, and it's going to be in such a great place with good parking. So I'm excited for that. And lastly, I attended the University of Wyoming football game Friday night. I haven't missed a home game yet, and they beat heavily ranked Air Force. We are 3-1 on the year and rolling. So if you get a chance, I think there's only 2 games left at home. One of them is it's October 1st against Fresno, and then we have Boise State in the cold in November. But if you get a chance to go one of those, they're a lot of fun, and we have a really good team this year. So that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have anything. I just want to recognize our incoming chief of the fire department. He'll be starting here soon. So Chief Black, congratulations, and you have a lot of respect, I know, in the fire department and on this council as well. So welcome, and we look forward to working with you in the future. You're welcome. Great. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate it. The next meetings of the City Council will be a work session to be held at 4:30 p.m. Tuesday, September 27th, 2022 in the council meeting room, and a regular council meeting to be held at 6 p.m. Tuesday, October 4th, 2022 in the council chambers. A notice of an executive session to take place at this date and during this meeting was given. We have matters to discuss regarding personnel, land acquisition, and litigation. Therefore, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn into an executive session, and at the conclusion of the executive session to reconvene this regular meeting solely for the purposes of adjourning this regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councilmember Cathy, seconded by Vice Mayor Nell. There being a majority of members present and a motion to adjourn into the executive session having been moved and seconded, and that motion requiring a 2/3 majority of the council present, please cast your vote. A greater than 2/3 majority of the council members voted in favor of the motion, and we are hereby adjourned into an executive session. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice night and stay safe.